guys, it's Michael.
And Carter.
And this is another episode of Hammercircuit.
We have a question for you guys today, and that question is, where's the willpower?
In the turn of the 21st century, we've seen that with the rise of technology such as smartphones, computers, social media, there's been a lack of willpower, because now you can just look at people who are actually doing stuff, and you can just sit on the couch, scroll through your feed, you know?
Yeah, especially with video games. Before, in the past, video games were, you either have to go to an arcade machine or you have a floppy disk. But to get that floppy disk to work, you had to know some really basic programming. Like, it wasn't difficult programming by any means, but you had to know it. Right, Michael? Can you explain a little bit?
Well, like, let's just say it took a lot more effort to run a video game on a computer than it does now. Now, all you have to do is you have to go to, like, you know, just the Apple App Store and just, you know, search a video game, search a app, download it, play it. That's it. It's very simple now. And big corporations in like America and just big game corporations know that they can take advantage of the consumer's attention span, because they know the chemical responses that drive humans.
Yeah, they literally will hire people who understand in depth the human brain in depth, and they'll have them give insight on how they can trigger certain parts of your brain chemistry to get you addicted to a certain video game.
So here's a really big issue, is that with this new technology and with the new kind of attitude towards things, the willpower that we have has just decreased. You know, people are they're getting their information in a much more smaller, shorter format. Some people just get it from Twitter and Facebook and stuff, and other times, yeah, some people just get all their news from Facebook, actually.
Yeah, another thing that I see, some people, instead of actually going out into the world and exploring it on their own, they'll watch people on YouTube. What are they called? Vloggers.
Mm-hmm.
They'll watch a vlogger, and they'll live their entire life just watching this vlog. I shouldn't say their entire life, because YouTube hasn't been around long enough for people to live their entire life, really. So I can't make that statement as a certainty. But I know a lot of people personally who just watch YouTube videos and watch movies all day, and just indulge in that and veg out every single day. They just turn on the TV or turn on their phone and start watching YouTube, and they just drop their jaw and veg out.
Right. Let's put it this way. It's that, you know, in every instance where you find yourself bored, you have two options. You can drown yourself and flood yourself with entertainment, and that's all great and dandy. But there comes a point where you need to realize, it would be good to realize that you can actually create things or do things that are productive in that vacuum of boredom.
Exactly. In my opinion, and I believe Michael agrees with me on this. Well, I don't believe, I know he does. If you're bored, it's already too late. You're already screwing something up. There should be no time existing for boredom. You should always be busy with something. Think of life as an hourglass, where the sand in the hourglass is your life, and it's slowly dripping out. And I remember I told Michael about this. I did the calculations. It's not too uncommon to see a teenager playing roughly 3 hours of video games or watching TV for three hours, or, you know, you put all the activities of them just dropping their jaw and vegging out. Those activities can add up to 3 hours very easily. Well, if you do that every single day for a year, it's over 1,000 hours, and there's just over 8,000 hours in an entire year. I did the math very specifically. It's 12.5%.
That's a huge amount.
Right. That's 1/10 of the way. 1,000 hours is 1/10 of the way to becoming an expert in something.
Right.
That's over $8,000 worth of Missouri minimum wage.
And we're saying 18% over a year.
Yeah. 12.5% over a year.
So what that means is that if they spent that time, that percentage, like studying something or working on something, they could technically become an expert in that field, like, or at least a semi-expert in that field, even before they leave high school. Now, obviously, this is like, you know, this is like works good and like, you know, but here's the thing. There comes a point where, and it happens to all sorts of people, when you look back and you might be near the end of your life, the middle of your life, or the beginning of your life, but you look back and you realize I have been wasting my time. You know, you always hear that, you know, the 80-year-olds and 90-year-olds who, you know, they say that they have a lot of regrets and stuff. But that's like the main reason of that is that they just haven't realized it sooner, or they never took the time to stop and think. And I also know that Carter agrees with this.
Yeah.
But like, we're both huge advocates of like meditation, and I mean, to put it even more simply, it's just stopping and thinking and saying, well, I could go and spend like 30 minutes on social media and see what everybody else is doing, trying to put a fake life on social media. You could look at that, you know, everybody's smiling and stuff. Nobody's freaking, I mean, it's very rare, but no, you don't see somebody saying, oh, I got into a fight with my parents and now I feel terrible and I feel like nobody loves me. Nobody says that stuff on social media. And all these forms of media and stuff, people are putting on fronts. You're not seeing many authentic personas online per se. There's always some sort of front or filter that you're seeing them through.
Right, they're living in some sort of a fake delusional world. And the problem is, if you're living in a fake delusional world and in real life there's something lacking in your real life, you never end up working your way out of that difficult situation. So at the end of your life, it feels like life is just a sponge full of water. There's so much more you could have just squeezed out of it, you know? I personally went through this, and I know Michael did too. After just sitting, if you just sit quietly and think to yourself for a little bit, you know, meditation, and just think to yourself, any thought that comes into your head, just study it for a while. You start to realize things about yourself that you never realized before. And oftentimes, a lot of people actually go into a depression after they start meditating for a week or so.
There's a sort of backlash. It might not. That's my interpretation of it. But some people just like, they just can't handle seeing things as they really are. And another thing is that, so looping back to this willpower thing, willpower is the ability to, you know, perform a certain activity. Certain activities take more or take a lot of willpower or not that much willpower.
Right, because not all things are enjoyable, so it's important to have that willpower, and when you come to face with activities that you don't want to do necessarily.
Right,
you know?
But the thing is that humans are one of the only species on Earth that can change their own biology. So even if you're trapped in the constant chase for instant gratification, which is the result of the internet and stuff, because you get those notifications, those text messages, all those things, you can still break out of that loop. You can break out of that social media, watching YouTube. You can break out of it. I mean, obviously, it takes some sort of catalyst to get there.
Right.
It takes some moment of realization, but many people can break out of it.
Right, and honestly, this goes out to people who don't understand what Michael and I are talking about, because it's hard to explain the feeling that you get once you break out of the cycle of just vegging out on your phone every single day to social media and putting a bag over your head and just faking who you are online or whatever. There's a certain feeling, and it's like the hump, that difficult hump that you have to get over and just actually start doing productive things in your everyday life once you come to the moment of realization. And it takes a while after getting over that hump to really start enjoying it. But when you do start enjoying it, you end up happier overall than you were before when you're just watching TV or playing video games for hours on end, because you're actually producing something or learning a skill or getting something done and not investing your time in a fake world.
You know, I have a theory about how people get really trapped into these worlds is that they can project themselves onto what they're watching. So if they're playing a video game, they can project themselves onto the character, and they have the fake feeling. And they can do the same thing with vloggers and YouTube videos. They can project themselves onto the person, and they feel like they are achieving something through that person or through that video game character.
Yeah, there's some video games that try to be sad, like, you know, they have sad endings or sad something. Really, all that is the person playing the game reflecting their own emotions into the characters. Because those characters don't really have feelings. They're programmed to act a certain way. They're
always gonna, no matter how many times you play that game, there's always a finite means like it's always constant, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's always like there's only a finite amount of endings. You know, you can always, if you do the same steps, you'll still reach the same ending, of course.
Right. The algorithm is consistent and it can change, but there is an algorithm for how the characters are going to behave. So really all that's happening is the person playing the video game is just creating emotions in a fake world. And I think that's screwed up in some sense, because there's actual people. Like, we have families, we have friends, we have clubs and communities that you can get invested into and actually invest your emotions into those communities, to when you are there in those communities and with those people, you're helping them along with yourself. So it's not just...
It's not a fake world. It's the real world. And I mean, I'm a software engineer, so I use technology all the time. But even I know that sometimes I have to take a break, and I have to go off in the forest, go for a walk, you know, write a blog. Like, I don't just build software. If I built software, I would be so burnt out, so hollow of a person.
Mm-hmm. So this really gets into the nitty-gritty part of the willpower and us talking about it, because with willpower you have to be able to push yourself through things that you don't necessarily want to do. And we mentioned this earlier. For instance, Michael, he's new to running long distances, but he has willpower, so he's capable of pushing himself through the initial hump in beginning running. And I know I've been there before, where for the first month just about, there's just this hump where you don't enjoy running, and it takes time and willpower to push your way through it. The problem is with video games and indulging in these...
There's no pain. There's no suffering.
Right, and if there is, you can switch it, you know?
You can find the cheat codes. You can do all those things. Now, the main argument against this willpower thing and technology and stuff is like, well, I'm lazy. I'm a teenager. I'm just 16 and stuff. My father, I'm not going to say who he is, whatever, but he was in the Soviet Union. In the Soviet Union in general, their education, they graduate a little bit earlier than when we do. What does that mean? What it means is that we cannot necessarily use those excuses, because people in different countries, when you're 16, you're just basically an adult, you know? So your excuse that, oh, I'm 16 and stuff, and oh, it's the hormones and stuff, all these things, now there are biological like major inconsistencies that do occur with certain people. Those take a lot more effort and stuff to correct, but you cannot blame yourself on the current societal stuff, because here's the thing: you as a person, you can do whatever the hell you want. It has nothing to do with whatever society thinks. If society thinks that you're a student and you should only be studying, and you should be studying for so that you can go to college, get a major, and go and get a job, and, you know, get married and stuff, that's the path that somebody expects you to go onto. But you need to understand that just because this is the common thing doesn't mean it doesn't have its faults. Common solutions have faults because they're not customized to individual.
And really, in each and every single individual needs their own program, that they have their own walk in life. And the biggest issue about the whole willpower thing is people aren't being prepared to understand this and accept this and act on it. And even if they do understand this, they don't have the willpower to actually execute these actions that you would need to take. Like, for instance, you want to be a software engineer when you grow up, Michael. So what are you doing? You're going in the Spark program. That's not the...
What am I doing? I'm building software.
Right, you're building software, and in your free time, you're taking camps, you're getting certificates on to prove that you know how to do this to a potential employer. You're going to Spark, you're taking action to actually go down a road that not too many people are going down our age, right? So it takes a certain amount of willpower to do that, but the average person in our high school, at least, and at least in our high school, we see them just they're just lazy, or they're not investing into the right things that are needed to actually go down a road that is productive and useful and bring meaning to their lives. They're just following the common road. They're participating in like 1 or 2 sports, and they're like, oh, that's enough, then I'll just go to college. And they're just walking through a path in life that every single person is taking.
Right, and obviously this is opinionated, and there's a huge amount of anecdotal stuff to this, but here's the thing. A lot of people will think that we're crazy. The thing is that they'll think that we're just born successful and all this other stuff. They'll think that like we didn't go through blood, sweat, and tears to get here. But the thing is that those people, and this is not everybody, but there's a huge amount of people that they'll see people who are successful, and because of the way media presents it, they're like, oh, well, they were always that way. Well, that's not the case. I have a blog, for example. I've been blogging for almost like at least maybe 9 months or something.
Going on a year now.
Almost a year now. I've only started gaining traction over the past
month
or so. So
yeah, he went from having roughly like 15, maybe between 50 and 30 followers, and then he just shot up, and now he's at...
Now I'm at like maybe 65, and I'm gaining new followers every day. And you'll be like, oh, that's cool, like he was, that type of stuff. But the thing is, like, so the average walk of life is not designed to leave someone happy. That's the thing. It's designed to benefit the system that's put in place.
Because consider this. This is something that Mike Rowe always says. There's jobs out there that people just have to do. Well, the majority of jobs out there are jobs that the average person would not want to get stuck up in. They're not jobs that people want to take. But people end up in those jobs because they didn't take any action early on in their life to avoid being in that position. And our system is set up to fill those jobs because that's the purpose of a society. The job that's high in demand, the people are prepared to fill those jobs. Unfortunately, the industries that are not being filled is the STEM field. We've mentioned this before in a previous podcast. However, these jobs include things from telemarketing to really boring office jobs that don't end up anywhere. The list goes on. So the average person's going to end up in jobs like that, or in some field that's just completely unsatisfying to them.
So with this question of willpower, it's really, how do you know that you're losing this willpower and you can't do much? By the fact that you're spending a bunch of time doing stuff that really doesn't help you, doesn't benefit you, doesn't really get you anywhere.
Yeah, that's the important part. It's okay to be mediocre in a lot of things, but we all have to accept that everybody has to be an expert or semi-expert in at least one thing. They have to specialize in it, be good at it, to where they can make money with it. And that's just the simple truth. If you're mediocre in everything you do, then you won't be in the top 10% in that field. Well, you do the math. You don't make much money, and you don't succeed in that field.
I mean, it's a cause and effect chain. Mediocre skill equals mediocre salary equals a mediocre livelihood, health, physical stuff, everything, really.
Yeah, pretty much. So ideally, what we need to shoot for is to become an expert in one thing, and then any extra time that we have, we can fill with activities that we can become mediocre in. An example with me is, I'm not planning to be an archer or join some archery club, but I practice archery for about 30 minutes every single morning because I have a little extra free time after breakfast before I get on with my day and do other things. So I just spend 30 minutes every single morning just practicing some archery. I'm not going to become an expert in it. I'm just going to be mediocre at it because it's something fun, it can fill my time, and it's not something that's going to directly impact my life except filling up that time. All I'm doing is improving a skill, but I would not rely on archery for money. And that's where the separation piece comes into play, because I'm not relying on that for money. I'm simply mediocre in it, and then I'm going into engineering and machining as far as something I'm going to become an expert in to make money off of.
And I'm taking a similar aspect to that. I'm practicing the guitar, every once in a while, and studying music theory on the side. I'm not planning on becoming an expert musician. I think I've kind of don't have enough time to do that pretty much, and it's not really a high-paying job. But I still can do it to derive a little bit of happiness and saying, I did this. I took the time and effort to learn how to do this, and it makes other people happy as well. So, basically, the real question I want you guys to think about, that I want you guys to ask yourselves, is what I'm doing every single day, just over the course of an average student year, is what I'm doing really going to help me achieve a specific goal, right? Because school does not train you to do one specific thing. It trains you to be okay at many things, but not one specific thing.
Right, and that's why we believe college is just another stepping stone, because that's supposedly where you're supposed to actually learn what your one thing is and where you get good at that one thing. The problem with that is that college is expensive, so people who don't go don't often get to specialize in a field if they didn't take action beforehand.
Right, so what happens is that they'll say, oh, I want to do this, I want to do that, but here's the thing. Just saying, oh, I wish I want to be this, I wish I want to be that, doesn't do anything. You could wish that you were a singer or an actor or something, but unless you're consistently doing singing and practicing acting stuff every single day, or at least every other day or something, you're not going to be able to reach the expertise necessary to be within the top 10% that actually make a livable wage.
Mm-hmm.
What I mean by top 10%, and why me and Carter are kind of using it a little bit sprinkled in here and there, is that places like America, they're a capitalist society. There's the American dream and all this other things, but it's really, you have to put in the effort to reach a certain level where you can differentiate yourself from the others who can do the same thing.
Right, I completely agree with that. So ultimately, what this wraps up as, in order to achieve that top 10%, you have to put down the video games. Stop sitting all day long watching YouTube or whatever. Stop being lazy. Fill up that time with where you're bored. Fill that up with an activity that will, one, specialize you in something so you can be the top 10% in that field. And once that's done, fill the rest of the time with activities that you can become mediocre in. Ultimately, just stop being lazy. That's the lesson that we can get from this. Get some willpower. Muscle through the things that you don't want to do.
Don't trap yourself in a cage. Don't call yourself lazy, not a hard worker, a procrastinator. Don't label yourself. Labels themselves are just a result of society, okay?
Exactly.
You can do whatever you want, and you can achieve anything you want as long as you put in the effort and you do it. You spend enough time on it. And you don't wait until it's too late.
And let me just say, the too late mark, I'd say, is about 18 years old. If you don't start to figure out what you're going to do in the future, the cutoff mark for a lot of people, the average person's 18, because that's when they're a legal adult. When you're a teenager, you have time to play around with some things, maybe intern in a place to figure things out. But as soon as you turn 18, if you haven't figured out what you're going to do and haven't taken action to either go into a college to learn more about it, because a lot of times you have to intern to get into a college, right? Or a specialized field, right. You have to take actions beforehand. So if you haven't done something, that's the cutoff mark right there. For me, it's 1.5 years just about. I'm getting my act together and I'm specializing in machining and engineering and such. So I have 1.5 years to get everything wrapped up before the cutoff mark is. About the same time frame for you, Michael.
Yeah, I have to make sure that, when they're looking at me, they know that I'm the person who can, if you say, hey, can you build this thing for me? I can be like, yes, I can, and I have a bunch of things saying, this guy knows what he can do, how to do stuff, basically. I mean, that's very abstract and stuff, but me and Carter have about 1.5 years to become, like, at least have a good level of expertise compared to everybody coming out of high school. So what we're really trying to say, and it seems very targeted towards high school students and stuff, but this is also for other people beyond that. Guys, sit down and think, and just think about how much time you spend doing things that don't really help you, and realize that you can replace that with something that will help you and still provides you with a sense of achievement. You can break free of the cage that society is constantly trying to trap us in. This has been a very heartfelt episode of Hammercircuit. I'm Michael.
I'm Carter.
See you next time.